I was not even supposed to be home that night. My company had one of those big corporate gatherings, networking, endless speeches, a buffet that looked better than it tasted. I had planned to stick it out, make the right impressions, shake the right hands. But somewhere between my second watered-down whiskey and the CEO's rambling monologue about our vision for the next decade, I realized I had heard it all before. So I left. I was not rushing home for any particular reason. If I was being honest with myself, my marriage with Vanessa had been running on fumes for a while. We were not fighting, not arguing, but we were not exactly living either. It was like a song that had been playing in the background for years, familiar, but without any real feeling. When I pulled into the driveway, everything looked the same. The house was dark, porch light flickering like it always did when the wiring acted up. But something fell off like a shift in the air I could not quite explain. I stepped inside, kicking off my shoes, and headed to the kitchen for some water. That was when I heard it. Laughter. Soft, muffled, almost hushed, but unmistakable. It was coming from down the hall. I froze, my grip tightening around the glass in my hand. Vanessa was not the type to stay up late watching TV, and we never had guests over this late. My mind searched for explanations. Maybe she was on a call. Maybe she had a friend over. But deep down, an unease settled in my gut. I set the glass down and moved quietly down the hallway, my heartbeat picking up with every step. The closer I got, the clearer the sounds became. Whispers, a low chuckle, the kind of intimate murmur that made my stomach twist. I pushed open the bedroom door, and there they were. Vanessa, and some guy who looked barely old enough to rent a car, tangled in my sheets. For a second, my brain refused to accept what my eyes were seeing. I had walked into my own home, into my own bedroom, and found my wife in bed with another man. A stranger. No, not a stranger. The personal trainer she had been raving about for weeks. Jason. I had not thought much of it at the time. He is helping me get stronger, she had said. I feel amazing. Yeah, I bet she did. The kid scrambled off the bed, grabbing a sheet to cover himself like he had suddenly grown a conscience. Vanessa just stared at me, her face a mix of shock and something else. Guilt, maybe, but also the realization that there was no getting out of this. I should have yelled, should have raged, thrown something, made a scene. But I did not. Instead, I laughed. It came out before I could stop it, sharp, humorless, the kind of laugh you let out when your mind is trying to keep from breaking. The room was so quiet you could hear the tension hanging between us, thick and suffocating. You have got to be kidding me, I muttered, shaking my head. Vanessa opened her mouth to speak, but I held up a hand. Do not. Just do not. I could not stomach whatever excuse she was about to spin. I needed air. I needed to be anywhere but here. Without another word, I turned and walked out, leaving the door open behind me like an open wound. I did not take my keys, my coat, nothing. Just walked down the driveway and kept going. The night air was sharp, biting against my skin, but I barely felt it. My mind was too busy replaying the image I would never be able to unsee. Vanessa, tangled up with someone else in the bed we shared. I kept walking until I reached the park a few blocks away. It was empty, except for the occasional flicker of streetlights and a rusted swing swaying in the wind. I sat on a bench, my elbows resting on my knees, staring at the ground. And that was when the question started. How long? How many times? Was it just him, or had there been others? Had I been blind, or had she just been careful? The truth was, I could not even bring myself to be angry at the kid. Jason was young, stupid, probably thought sleeping with an older married woman was some kind of accomplishment. But Vanessa? She knew exactly what she was doing. She knew what we had built, the years we had spent together, and she had thrown it away like it was nothing. My phone buzzed in my pocket, snapping me out of my thoughts. I pulled it out, half expecting Vanessa, but it was a text from my buddy, Eric. Eric, hey man, you left early. Everything good? I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. What was I supposed to say? Actually, no. Eric, I just caught my wife in bed with her trainer. How was the rest of the party? I shoved the phone back in my pocket. I was not ready to talk about it. Hell, I was not even sure what I was going to do next. A car passed by, headlights flashing across the park bench, and for a brief moment, I thought about calling a cab and getting a hotel for the night. But the idea of leaving, of running away, felt too easy. I was owed answers, and tomorrow I was going to get them. After about an hour of sitting on that cold park bench, staring at nothing, I forced myself to go home. I had no plan, no grand speech in mind. I just knew I could not sit there all night, letting my thoughts run me in circles. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked exactly the same as when I had left. The flickering porch light cast strange shadows on the lawn, and for a brief moment, I wondered if any of my neighbors had seen him leave. If they had heard anything. If they had already started whispering about me, without me even knowing. I stepped inside, bracing myself for what was waiting. The house was quiet, too quiet. No pleading at the door, no desperate apologies. Just the faint clink of glass from the kitchen. Vanessa was there, sitting at the table with an open bottle of wine and two glasses, one untouched, the other half empty. She had changed into an old sweatshirt and leggings, her face scrubbed free of makeup. She looked exhausted, her eyes red, her posture slouched like she had been sitting there for a while. For a second, she did not even look like the woman I had caught in our bed earlier. She looked small. I pulled out a chair and sat across from her. We stared at each other for a long moment, the air thick with tension. Finally, I broke the silence. Why? My voice was calm, but it barely felt like my own. Why him? She flinched, gripping the stem of her wine glass, like it was the only thing keeping her together. I do not know, she whispered. I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. That is really the best you have? You do not know. Tears welled in her eyes, but I was not feeling sympathetic. Not yet. It was not about him, she said, voice breaking. It was not even about you. She hesitated, swallowing hard. I felt lost. Lost. Like that was supposed to justify what she had done. How long? She looked away, her fingers tightening around glass. A few weeks. I exhaled sharply, running my hands over my face. Jesus, Vanessa. I did not plan it, she rushed to add, her voice desperate. It just happened, right? I cut in, shaking my head. That is what you were going with. I should have been furious. I should have yelled, flipped the table, done something. But I just sat there, absorbing the weight of her words. A few weeks. Long enough for it to be deliberate. Long enough for her to have every opportunity to stop. I do not get it, I muttered, more to myself than to her. We were not perfect, but this? I know, she choked out. I know I ruined everything. But I did not want to lose you. I still do not. I stared at her, incredulous. You did not want to lose me, but you did this. I gestured vaguely toward nothing, as if the memory of earlier was floating in the air. With him, a kid who probably still gets carded at the movies. She flinched at the sharpness in my voice, but I did not stop. What, was this a midlife crisis thing? Needed to feel young again? Or did you just like the attention from someone who does not remember a time before streaming services? Her face crumpled, and she wiped her tears with the sleeve of her sweatshirt. I was not thinking, she admitted. I was lonely, and you've been so distant lately, and I felt like, do not. I snapped, cutting her off. Do not even try to turn this around on me. She nodded quickly, staring down at the wine glass. I'm not blaming you, she whispered. I'm just trying to explain. Explain what? I leaned forward, my voice low and sharp. That you were bored? That you wanted a thrill? What exactly do you expect me to say here, Vanessa? That I get it? That it is fine because you are feeling... What? Neglected? She let out a shaky breath, looking like she was barely holding herself together. I thought back to the kid, Jason, or whatever his name was, how clueless he had looked, how out of place he seemed in our bedroom. Did he even understand what he had helped destroy? Or was this just some casual fling to him, a story he would one day brag about to his friends? A new thought hit me, and my stomach twisted. Was this the first time? I asked, my voice quieter now, but no less sharp. Vanessa's head snapped up, her eyes wide, panicked. Yes, she said quickly. I swear it was the first and only time. I searched her face, looking for any sign of a lie. But even if she was telling the truth, it did not make a difference. The damage was already done. That detail stopped me cold. A kid who spent his afternoons trimming hedges and pulling weeds did not just wake up one day and afford a car that cost more than my mortgage payment. I stared at the screen, something gnawing at the edges of my thoughts. This was not adding up. If Angela was telling the truth, if this was some impulsive, one-time thing born from loneliness and bad decisions, then why did it feel like there was more to it? I scrolled through more of his posts. Another picture, this one from a month ago, him holding up a brand new Rolex. The caption? Hard work pays off. Hard work? The kid mowed lawns. I tossed my phone on the table and leaned back, rubbing my hands over my face. Something wasn't right. The waitress, an older woman with tired eyes, came over and set my coffee down. You need anything else, hon? I shook my head. Just the coffee, thanks. She gave me a knowing look. The kind people give when they can tell you're in the middle of something heavy, but know better than to ask. Long night. I exhaled sharply. Something like that. She nodded, tapping the counter with her pen. Just remember, whatever's keeping you up, it won't seem as bad in the morning. I gave her a half smile, but I didn't believe it. As soon as she walked away, I picked my phone back up and did something I really shouldn't have done. I checked Angela's bank records. I still had access, and if she was going to tell me she'd do anything to fix this, then she had better not be hiding anything else. The first few transactions were normal: groceries, a gas station, a couple of online shopping purchases. But then I saw it. A withdrawal. A large one. 2 weeks ago, Angela had taken out $5,000 in cash. I sat up straighter, my pulse picking up speed. The same week, she claimed she felt invisible. The same week, she started this thing with him. My mind raced. Had she given him money? Was that why he suddenly had a Rolex and a brand new car? I swallowed hard, tried to ignore the way my stomach twisted. This wasn't just a stupid mistake. This was something else entirely. Her face crumpled, and she buried it in her hands. I didn't know, she whispered. I thought I was helping him. I let out a slow, humorless laugh. Helping him, I repeated, shaking my head. Angela, you weren't helping him. You were funding his lifestyle. He played you, and you fell for it. Tears slid down her cheeks, but I had no sympathy left to give. Not after what I had just learned. I swear, I didn't know, she insisted, her voice breaking. He told me he needed help with his mom's hospital bills. I want to do something good. I leaned forward, my hands flat on the counter. Did it feel good when you were sleeping with him too? My voice was calm, but the words were laced with venom. She gasped, shaking her head frantically. It wasn't about that. I was lonely, Daniel. I felt. She stopped, squeezing her eyes shut like she couldn't even bear to finish the sentence. You felt what? I pressed, my patience hanging by a thread. Neglected? Unappreciated? And instead of talking to me about it, you handed thousands of dollars to a kid and let him screw you in our bed. She sobbed in her hands, shoulders shaking violently. I didn't care. Not anymore. Tell me something, Angela. I continued, my voice dangerously quiet. Would you have ever told me the truth? Or would you have kept smiling at me every morning, pretending everything was fine while funding his little shopping sprees? She didn't answer. That silence told me everything. I took a step back, exhaling sharply. My body was trembling, not with sadness, but with rage, with exhaustion, with the overwhelming realization that my wife had not only betrayed me physically, but financially, emotionally, every damn way possible. I was going to tell you, she finally whispered. I scoffed. Yeah? When? Before or after he traded in his sports car for a yacht? She flinched at my words, but I was beyond caring. This was a level of betrayal I never saw coming, and now I was standing here, drowning in it. I love you, Daniel, she pleaded. I know I messed up. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I need you to know that I never stopped loving you. I stared at her, my heart hammering in my chest. You don't do this to someone you love, Angela. My voice was quiet, but each word hit like a bullet. You don't lie to them. You don't cheat on them. You don't empty their bank account for some kid who tells you what you want to hear. She sobbed harder, clutching at the fabric of her sweatshirt like she was holding herself together by a thread. I turned away, rubbing my temples. My head was pounding. My entire world had just imploded, and I had no idea what to do next. Finally, after what felt like hours of standing in that suffocating silence, I spoke. I'm done, I said, my voice void of any emotion. Angela's head snapped up, panic flashing in her eyes. What do you mean? I met her gaze, and for the first time, I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just emptiness. I'm done with this marriage. Her breath hitched. No, Daniel, please. We can fix this. We can go to therapy. We can. No, Angela. I cut her off, shaking my head. There's nothing left to fix. You made your choices. Now you get to live with them. Tears streamed down her face as she tried to reach for me, but I stepped back. Daniel, please, she whispered. I'll do anything. I let out a bitter laugh. That's the problem, Angela. You already did. And with that, I walked out the door, leaving behind the woman who had spent our entire marriage convincing me she was someone she was not. She wiped her eyes and took a shaky breath before continuing. At first, I thought it was just harmless. It felt nice to have someone notice me again, to feel appreciated. She looked down at her hands, twisting her fingers together like she was afraid of what came next. But then he started texting me. Just small things, asking how my day was, telling me I looked nice when he saw me outside. She paused, biting her lip. I should have stopped it then. I know I should have. I set my coffee down, staring at her. But you didn't. She shook her head. No, I liked the attention. I liked how easy it was to talk to him. And then one day, he told me about his mom, how she was sick, how they were struggling with medical bills. He never directly asked me for money, but I offered. It felt good to help someone, to feel like I was doing something meaningful. Her voice cracked, and then it just spiraled. I let out a slow breath, trying to contain the anger simmering just beneath my skin. And when did it stop being about helping him and start being about whatever the hell happened in our bedroom? She flinched. It wasn't planned, Daniel. I swear. I never woke up thinking I would do something like this. One night, he came over to thank me, and I let him inside. We had wine, we talked, and I do not know. 1 second, we were just sitting there, and the next. Her words trailed off, but she did not need to finish. I knew exactly what had happened next. My stomach twisted, and I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. How many times? She hesitated. Angela, I snapped, my patience gone. How many times? Her shoulders slumped in defeat. 3. The word landed like a punch to the gut. 3 times. It wasn't a one-night mistake. It was a choice, made again and again. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the woman I once thought I knew. I was going to stop, she said quickly. I told him it had to end. That's why he showed up that night. He wanted to see me one last time. I scoffed, shaking my head. And what? You're going to let him down gently? Give him a severance package for his services? She winced but said nothing. I ran a hand down my face, exhausted. What was the money for, Angela? Really? She swallowed hard. At first, I believed him. I thought I was helping his family. But after a while, I started to wonder. He would show up with new clothes, expensive shoes. Then he sent me that picture of the car. I confronted him, and he swore it was a gift from his uncle, but deep down I knew. I didn't want to admit it. I laughed bitterly. You didn't want to admit that you were being scammed by the same kid you were sleeping with. She lowered her head. I was stupid. Yeah, I muttered. You were. Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Angela wiped at her face again, sniffling. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, she whispered. But I swear to you, I was going to end it. And I never stopped loving you. I stood up, pushing my chair back. Love, I repeated, shaking my head. You don't love me, Angela. If you did, we wouldn't be having this conversation. She gasped like I just slapped her, but I didn't care. I was too drained, too disgusted to sugarcoat anything. I need space, I said finally. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but I can't be in this house with you right now. She grabbed my hand, her fingers trembling. Please, Daniel, let me fix this. I pulled away. You can't fix this. And with that, I walked out, leaving her sobbing at the table. As I got into my car and pulled out of the driveway, one thought echoed in my mind. She didn't just break my trust. She burned it to the ground. I drove for hours, aimlessly wandering through the streets, my mind a tangled mess of emotions I couldn't untangle. I wasn't sure if I was more angry at her or myself, angry that she'd done it or angry that I still cared. The worst part of betrayal isn't just the act itself. It is the realization that the person you trusted the most was capable of it. By the time I pulled into a quiet parking lot near the lake, the sun was hanging high, casting long shadows over the water. I sat there for a while, staring at the waves lapping against the shore, trying to make sense of everything. Could I really move past this? Would I ever be able to look at Angela the same way again? My phone buzzed in the passenger seat, pulling me from my thoughts. I glanced at the screen. Mark, where the hell are you? You skipped the morning meeting. I sighed, rubbing my temple before typing back. Something came up. I'll explain later. Almost immediately, another message popped up. Mark, you good? You need anything? For a second, I considered telling him everything. Mark had been my best friend since college. He was the kind of guy who would drop everything to help if I asked. But something about saying it out loud, making it real, felt like too much. I'm fine. I sent back, though I wasn't sure if that was true. I turned the car back on and headed home, my chest tightening the closer I got. I wasn't sure what I was walking into, and for the first time in my marriage, I didn't feel like my house was mine. It felt like a place that belonged to a different version of me, one who hadn't yet learned that his wife was capable of tearing him apart. When I stepped inside, the smell of coffee greeted me. Angela was sitting at the kitchen table, a notebook open in front of her, a pen twirling between her fingers. She looked up immediately, her eyes searching mine for any sign of hope. I started making calls, she said quickly. I'm selling my car, cashing out some of my savings. I'll get the money back. All of it. I nodded, setting my keys on the counter. Good. She hesitated, then flipped the notebook around so I could see the scribbled notes inside. I also looked into therapy. Couples counseling. I know you said you needed time, but I wanted you to know I'm serious about fixing this. I stare at the page, the neatly written list of names, addresses, phone numbers. She had already called a few, judging by the check marks beside them. You don't waste time, I muttered. I can't afford to, she whispered. Not when it comes to us. I exhaled, running a hand through my hair. I still don't know if this is fixable, Angela. She swallowed hard, nodding. I know, but I have to try. I pulled out a chair and sat down across from her, rubbing my hands together. Tell me something, I said, my voice calm but firm. If I hadn't caught you last night, would you have ever told me the truth? She flinched, looking down at the table. I don't know, she admitted. I want to say yes, that I would have come clean. But I was afraid, Daniel. Afraid of losing you. Afraid of what it would do to us. A bitter chuckle escaped me. You didn't think about that before? I did, she said quickly. I thought about it every single time I looked at you, every time I sat across from you at dinner, knowing I had done something unforgivable. I hated myself for it. Not enough to stop, I said flatly. She looked up at me then, her face broken, exhausted. I don't expect you to believe me, but it wasn't just selfishness, Daniel. It was fear, guilt, shame. I was drowning in it, but I didn't know how to reach for you without pulling you down with me. I leaned back in my chair, studying her. I wanted to be angry. Hell, I was angry, but I also saw something in her that I hadn't seen last night. Regret. Real, raw regret. And maybe that was the only thing keeping me from walking out that door for good. I need more than words, Angela, I finally said. If there's even a chance of us rebuilding this, I need to see actions. She nodded quickly. Anything, whatever you need. I thought for a moment, then sighed. We go to counseling. No excuses, no skipping sessions. Done, she said without hesitation. And you tell me everything from now on, I continued. Every thought, every feeling, every damn insecurity you have. If I'm screwing up as a husband, you tell me before you go looking for validation somewhere else. Her face crumbled, and she nodded again. I will. I swear. I stared at her, this woman who had been my world and my biggest heartbreak all at once. I didn't know if I believed in second chances. I didn't know if I could ever look at her without remembering what she had done. But for now, I was willing to see if trying was worth it. And maybe, just maybe, we weren't completely broken yet.